Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Schmovie. This is episode number 264. I'm one of your hosts, Steve, and who else is here with me?
Ron.
And John.
There it is. That's the three best friends that anyone could ever have. I think that's what they call us, right?
The three wise men of the apocalypse.
That's it, yeah. It's one of those two. It goes without, it depends what the day of the week, which one they call us.
Right.
So, today, as we record this, Ronald, it sounds like your house may be turning into a boat or something. Like there's
man.
really bad flooding downtown.
It's crazy. It's like a massive amount of rain that's not supposed to stop until like 11 or something like that. So it's like they've extended it a little bit. But I looked outside a couple hours ago. I showed you guys a picture, and it was just, I could not see the wheels of my car. I was like, oh, okay.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be doing this because it takes my mind off it a little bit. And so it's like pandemic, flooding, wedding. It's like all this stuff, man.
I think it's locusts next, and then frogs.
I think so.
Those are the next two plagues. I'm not sure.
Whatever happened to the murder hornets?
You were saying this storm is supposed to go to 11, but that's a pretty popular storm when it gets held over like that. So I think we should take that as a positive sign that the rain is really doing something. It's really, getting people behind it. A lot of people are noticing. A lot of people are noticing it. It's doing something right. If we're talking about it, the rain's doing something right.
You're saying it's trending.
It's trending outside. Yeah, that's what we call it when it's raining like this.
So I wanted to bring something up real quick. I don't know if you guys got this email. I don't know. I know Ronald has Disney Plus, but we were talking last week about the whole Milan coming to Disney Plus on on September 4th, and as like a premium purchase. And I got an email today as a Disney Plus subscriber that was kind of, some of this information was coming out between us recording last week and now. They kind of came out with some information about what we were discussing in some of the questions that we had, kind of about like, is it a rental, like a window period, like some of the PVOD are and things like that. But they kind of addressed some of that. But in general, they sent an email around that I got earlier this morning about, basically promoting this release now, finally, like officially. I'm sure all the subscribers got it in some form today or soon. But basically, it's interesting that they're using the branding that we were discussing. They're calling it Disney Plus with Premier Access. So, what they're saying basically is that if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, that's great. Like, thank you for subscribing. But basically, you can do this option where you're paying $29.99 and have access to this premium title that's only available to people on the platform that want to pay that difference. The key thing that I was like reading about, which was some of the questions, was that once you have that premier access to Milan, you can watch it as many times as you want on any platform where Disney Plus is available. And it would continue to be accessible to you as long as you're an active Disney Plus subscriber. So it's almost like you're basically buying a digital copy and adding it to a special part of the Disney Plus library that is yours. And it seems like that's going to probably be something, depending on how this does, that they're probably going to start doing if it's successful. And I'm very curious to see how well it does. And it's kind of interesting because it is, if you think of it like that, it is kind of like, you're paying the $7 or whatever it is to be a part of the Disney Plus platform, to be a member, to be a subscriber. And it's almost like they're offering this, like, it's like a Patreon option, or it's like this premium thing, and that's what they're calling it. But the Premier Access is just literally like, if this happens in the future, these movies that you're paying this premium for, they would be yours for as long as you are a member to this service. And that's different and new, and especially at this level, in terms of like the what do you call it, like the size of the movie, I guess, the production budget of the movie. Not only is it coming out on the platform, but it's got this unique type of pay structure to it. But it is not going to be something that leaves, your access like all the other or most of the PVODs are like that we discuss. So that's interesting, and that's an interesting angle and a way to promote it. That it's not going to be just like, oh, I'm in the platform and I get to watch it, and it's gone for it's gone within 24 hours or 48 hours or whichever it is. I don't know. Did you get that email, Ronald, or have you read about this?
No. Let me think. Let me see what email I got it through, because I'm super curious about that.
That almost sounds like they are definitely creating a sort of new category of release. If they're going to do this special thing, how could it be for this one movie? Do you know what I mean? Like the suggestion that you're going to have a sort of premiere access library that you yourself curate within the Disney platform that you only access on their streaming site. That does sound very Disney to me, frankly. I wonder what the next release intended for this sort of little pocket is. And as we said, is it going to be something that goes straight to this premiere video on demand, or is it going to be something that has a short theatrical window and then, goes to that spot?
I think you know what it is, John. It's in the back of your mind, making a weird sound. And it's lingering there, and you don't want to say it out loud because it's too big of a fucking movie. But I think Black Widow is going to be the next one, and I think this is a trial run for them to maybe do it. I know it's a huge movie, but if this plays well, they're going to think about how much money they can make at home. Because how many movies can they push back that fit within the realm of like, they have these big gaps in content with, there's Mandalorian's coming out with 2021. There aren't any real big release. It's in October?
Yeah, it's coming out this fall. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so that gets that argument out of there.
It's still true that once that runs, what's that going to run for 8 weeks maybe? So mid-November they'll need some new content. That's right around the time that Black Widow is supposed to hit theaters. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do give it the theater the release for a few weeks, and then if it's on that platform within a month, it wouldn't shock me at this point, because I think it's a movie in an ongoing franchise that's chugging along and has other chapters coming, and it was supposed to be out several months ago. So some part of me feels like they're going to want to catch up with the time they lost this year a little bit, but another part of me knows that they have pushed everything back going forward. So it's very confusing to me. I did remember thinking initially, we all said, what about Black Widow? That could be a release on demand type thing. And then they seemed to emphatically say no, they weren't going to do that. But could they do this little quasi theatrical and home release thing? I could totally see that.
I really haven't seen much about Black Widow, but I mean, I do think there's something to the point of like, whenever these other movies kind of pick up, like if it gets to a point that it keeps getting delayed, or things continue to get pushed back, like everything's kind of getting pushed back. So it's not a matter of like it has to come out, and obviously movies don't have to come out. A ton of them taken off the calendar altogether. But it is an interesting idea to say it's a part of a bigger story, and I don't know how much, because it almost feels like a lot of its story was wrapped up in Endgame, but obviously they're making this movie for a reason. There's got to be some springboard to future movies with characters that we just don't know yet, that are kind of happening parallel to what we've watched already in the MCU. But yeah, I think that there's something to the idea of like, it needs to still come out, not only to like keep you aware of the fact that the MCU is still pumping movies out, and like, these seeds are being planted for whenever the next ones, Spider-Man or Thor or whatever, or the Eternals, like all these things that have to still kind of find their place. It does seem like it would be one that I think would still come out in theaters, but I would not be surprised if theaters aren't doing well, or if Tenet is a major failure, or, theatrically, I mean, or if Wonder Woman ends up getting pushed back again. Like, I don't know how far back they're going to push Black Widow, but it does seem interesting in terms of timing, where you're just like, oh, well, they have Mulan in September, they have Mandalorian in whatever it is, October, November, and, by the holiday time, like they're going to need some other big thing to kind of satiate subscribers, especially when they're kind of getting that feeling of like, oh, there's a lot of big things happening on Disney Plus again. And I think they're going to need to keep that momentum going, especially if theatrically things do not pick up the way some filmmakers and some studios are obviously hoping they do in the next month or two.
Which I don't see how they could. I mean, I still sometimes I'll go out and run errands and I'll be surprised at how many people are out and about doing stuff. But I still don't think that normalcy has kicked in to that extent. I might be surprised. I might be sadly surprised to see how many people in our city would be lining up to go sit in a super spreader event at a movie theater. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to picture that we won't see the sort of whatever the industry would think of as the negative outcome here, which is that no matter what they put out, it can't quite get traction and it can't quite be what they want it to be. You said something last time, or one of our recent episodes, about Tenet just not having a lot of competition on that same level, and it might have a few extra weeks to grow and a few extra weeks to kind of reign at the box office. Right. And who knows, Wonder Woman might be that movie that does that as well, that keeps bringing people in. But both of those feel like they work best in a kind of oasis. It doesn't feel like, okay, these movies did well, so now let's release everything. Let's go back to the theatrical model. I feel like I keep hitting this drum, but I just don't know that I can picture it returning to anything like what we used to see for the foreseeable future. And that's not just because of what the studios might decide, but it's because of feeling like I myself, I feel like I'm pretty representative of a certain kind of movie buff. I used to see a movie or two a week, and now I don't see myself doing that at all. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, but I do think this could point to a new way that a company like Disney decides, all right, this is a way for us to give these movies like a little bit of a loftier perch than just putting them on our on-demand service, but still essentially making them available to the people that aren't going to theaters.
Yeah, and this isn't coming from the perspective, like you were saying, we're not like bootleggers to the point where we aren't going to the theater. We go pretty frequently, even outside of the screenings that we were able to go to. So, it just it pains me, honestly, because I love the movie experience. But I think that if we're being honest, if DC's venues are saying they aren't taking people until 2021, any place within a 300-mile radius is pretty much canceling everything, and that's a conservative estimate. Just 2021 being when the beginning of it'll be when they'll revisit the idea of things happening. It's very possible that something could fall into the category of the PVOD. I mean, in this case, premium VOD, not even paid VOD, because this is a whole different level of VOD. This level of premium VOD it is going to be a regular part of our lives. And, before when we were kind of guessing that was the thing, that's just us being ahead of the curve, kind of thinking about trends that could happen just based on the quality of video experiences that we have. Being able to see something in 4K was like a dream, 10 years ago. Being able to do it for less than $3,000. In this case now, less than $1,000 in the case of some of those high-end Visios that they're selling now is insane. So the theater experience has changed. And I think people need to be comfortable with the idea that there's this dual movie experience that could be happening. Even myself, it's like a blow to my ego a little bit, because I thought myself a fancy movie-going gentleman. And that part of it is kind of fading in a way. I'm not saying going away completely, fading in the way that we've known it. That's all.
Yeah. I like to state for the record, I've only known one fancy movie-going gentleman, and that was probably a 6 or 7 year old Henry Walker.
He is a fancy gentleman.
He was super fancy, and he put us all to shame. I just want to state that for the record.
I guess it was the 6-year anniversary of Guardians of the Galaxy was recently. I think that's right, 6 years, right? Yeah, not 7. And the memory, the Facebook memory that it threw up was Henry in his tuxedo.
Yeah.
It was the first movie that we saw as a family at what is now the humdrum. We've been there a million times theater up here in Towson. but it was the beginning of like assigned seats and VIP level, and it was the first movie we had gone to see a family at that new theater, and it was such a good movie, and it was such a good family movie. It was funny how those memories started flooding back at me, and that wasn't even like a crowded opening night type screening. That was, either it was an early matinee or something on a day that we caught that. But it did get me. It was like the right movie, the right experience, the right picture to make me go, oh yeah, I kind of missed this. I missed this like excitement, and I also kind of miss when Henry would be so excited about something like that he would, he would actually, without even being prompted, like be like, well, I got to do something about this, and go upstairs and start putting on his tuxedo, But no, it's funny that you mentioned that in relation to that, because I have been thinking about that ever since then, and thinking about it as that theatrical experience, which was super fun in these last few years, because he was at the prime age to be getting excited about all these big franchise movies we've been going to see. So it's kind of interesting that this year, when there's been like this gray cloud over the movie industries, or the different studios and like the different outputs and the different franchises, and it sort of seems like, well, am I really that excited about all these giant movies? It's coinciding with him being in that 12 to 13 continuum, where he's also sort of like, yeah, whatever about stuff. So in a lot of ways, this has been sort of a depressing pop culture year in that sense. But really all it means is I'm back to watching things that I really enjoy as an adult. Like adult comedies or horror movies or dramas, indie movies, documentaries, stuff like that. I kind of feel like I have been slightly relieved in a weird way not to have all these giant, blockbusters to contend with. But when I think about a really good one, there's no experience like that,
For sure, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like you made a comment earlier about like just looking around and seeing like how many people will actually go out to a movie theater. And I mean, I gotta be honest, like I'm not impressed with people's decision making, and I worry that this movie, like if it's successful, it means people are like going in and sitting in a movie theater and things like that. I don't know. I hate to sound judgy, and I don't mean to at all. Like it scares me to think of like just the snowball effect of something like that for a movie, which, sure, it's entertainment, but I think in the times that we're in, it's like there's other means to achieve that, which is what some of these other studios are leveraging. And, that's an easy decision for me. And I just worry about, the effect that succeeding may have on different cities, and especially ones that are not doing very well. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's like I don't want these movies to do well in a strange way. I don't want
the theatrical, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I second that whole thing, man. Like, people's decision-making skills aren't that great. And to get on a kind of personal level, I kind of told you guys, still getting married, but had to cancel the venue wedding. I mean, having a bunch of people come to a place just felt kind of irresponsible. And these are people I love. And I know a lot of people that would have just come had I just had it, and so I don't know if everybody would have had a mask, and being able to monitor that stuff. I don't want to police that stuff. I don't want to tell people how to live. I don't want to be too judgy. And we had to make an executive decision. And man, I want to, at the end of this whole thing, I want all my friends to be here to watch movies. I want, to have fun, to raise their kids. And it feels like people are being a little short-sighted for something that really, honestly, if we really think about all the years that we've been alive, just a small piece of our lives that we've sacrificed for this to stay safe.
Oh, 100% agree with you.
Yeah. So
100%.
I've been going through it in my head, and I'm happy with my decision, but I don't know if everybody's kind of moving with the same level of caution that we are, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, because it just seems like it'll stretch on forever, and it'll never get better if people aren't gonna accept that life has to be abnormal for longer than you are comfortable with it being abnormal. And I really do think it's a meme at this point. But people saying like the pandemic isn't over just because you're over it, It's so funny how many people don't seem to understand that just because people around you haven't dropped dead doesn't mean that they won't. And just because no one maybe on your block, on your house, in your family, that close to you, no one close to you has gotten it or has died, that doesn't mean that you're past it somehow. I mean, I keep saying almost superstitiously, like, whatever we've been doing that's been working, let's try to continue what we've been doing for the most part. You know, we sometimes have to adapt. There'll be little things added in, little things we have to get done, taking the dogs to the vet, taking Henry to the doctor, different little things that are like, we got to figure out how to do this in this world, right? But the idea of acting like everything's normal and just returning to normalcy is farcical to me, and kind of, as you've said, almost nightmarish if you think about the results of that. If everybody has that attitude, we'll be dealing with this forever. I mean, you know, forever in quotes, I guess, but for years at least. It just seems crazy, especially when you read stories about like New Zealand and places like that where they were able to, you know, shut it down and take it seriously, and they have somewhat returned to normal existence, you know. In fact, those countries have every right to be angry with America, to be like, hey, you guys are making the movies, and now we're out and about. We could go see these movies, but they've been postponed because of you. I do think there's something strange. I mean, on the global level, this is something kind of new, and it's a bit embarrassing to see that our nation can't get its shit together.
Yeah, I think the key to all this stuff, especially with people that are just kind of going off of feelings, is you counter it with facts. There are places, the CDC is posting things. There are countries that are functioning. You brought up New Zealand. New Zealand had a soccer match happen, and it was like 30,000 people in one place post-COVID, and they were fine. There have not been any reported new instances of people getting COVID in a lot of those places. So you can back it up with facts. And that's what I've been trying to do in these small cases where I have these conversations with people that just make things up. Like it's not going to stop. It has stopped in places. Here are the places. Here's the information. There are places that are way more densely populated. Shut up, please. It's just like, it's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy, guys.
Yeah, I saw I think it was last night or this morning, you mentioning New Zealand, like just in terms of the ability to deal with stuff using science and facts, and also like just swift action and decisive action. I saw like, you know, they had like 102 days of like no community spread. And I saw yesterday, I want to say they had 4 new cases that apparently came about. I think it was in Auckland, but about like some issue at one of the borders, and like immediately locked down Auckland again. Like it was like the same day, you know what I mean? And like that kind of action, when you have 4 cases or whatever it was, I think it was only 4, but you know, like that ability to just like act quickly like that, and just to believe that, you know, this is what has to be done, you know, that's just, I'm envious of that. Like, you know, to be blunt, like, you know, there's been a complete lack of that in some shape or form this entire time here, even in a state like Maryland, where, you know, not to be too political, but like our governor has been pretty proactive rather than reactive, or even just lack of acting at all. But, you know, you just look around, you know, at these countries, and like, New Zealand, 102 days of no new community spread. Like, what the fuck does that even mean to us? Like 102 days? I don't even remember 102 days. You know what I mean? Like this feels like it's just going to be like this for a long time. And
well, the last 102 days for us have felt like one long day, you know? So it's very hard to imagine that. You're right. No, it's crazy. You hear that and you just go, oh yeah, that would have been back in May, you know? Holy shit.
Yeah, it's insane. And like, you know, there just seems to be like a resistance to like, you know, just wanting to get back to your life, and like, I'm not, you know, the you know, comments like, you know, I got to live my life, you know, things like that. I get it. Like, you know, people have things they have to do, you know, but I think we're talking about the things, we're not talking about the have tos, we're talking about the want tos. And those things are what I really question people's judgment in certain situations. And it makes me concerned, and, you know, obviously worry about like long-term success or healing for this whole thing, but we'll see. I don't know. We're talking about movie going and theatrical releases and things like that. So this is not a heavy conversation, but you know, it's a really, like John said, like it's like an opportunity for things to super spread if things are not done properly. And you can look across any experience I'm sure we've had going out in public that we've had to, you know, people are not enforcing things. People are not adhering to regulations or recommendations or requirements as it is now. So when something like that opens up, you can just assume and almost assuredly that like it's not going to be upheld there either, and that just scares me for people that come in contact with those that make decisions like that, and it makes me worry about a lot of people.
Media is politics, and politics are media. And whether we're talking about the messages that go into the media itself or its distribution, there are some politics on some level. And then the reopening of that opens up into some of the politics that exist of the day and how it relates to our society. So, I mean, obviously we're not going to have a stance that's, crazy and angry every episode, but sure enough, there's going to be some talk about politics in the middle of this because it is political. There is some politics involved with, theaters opening back up, the way that the things are being distributed, the way that awards are happening now. Like, that's all politics. And I guess it's kind of cool that it's kind of trickled into our podcast because it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen at some point. So,
well, yeah, there's pressure for all kinds of different reasons for these things to happen. There's pressure from the theater owners. There's pressure from different, parts of government that want things to happen at a certain time to look good or to feel like things are on the right path. There might be pressure coming from the other direction in some places to stay closed. I mean, and we've already expressed it ourselves, this desire to see movies succeed and to see the economy of Hollywood stay afloat because we like movies. But at the same time, if liking movies right now means hoping for people to flock to the theaters, I'm not with it. So
yeah, agreed.
Same.
100%.
But I'll also pay money for a premium thing at home and make it into an event in my family. You know what I mean? Like, I'm also going to do my part as a movie lover in the home zone. So it's like, I do think it's just, it's one more thing. And it does feel a little bit more sad and serious the more it rolls along and you realize that it doesn't seem like decisions are being made. I mean, I guess it makes sense that it's all financial, but it seems like that's the main thing driving some of these Hollywood decisions, some of these movies that have stubbornly held on to a date or have kept, like, again, we keep mentioning Tenet. I really think the failure of success of that movie is going to seem like a referendum on having theaters open at all.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, man. So what have you been watching? What have you been watching?
Well, I know we all watched the Seth Rogen movie, or Seth Rogen and Seth Rogen movie, An American Pickle.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll talk about that if you want.
Should we talk about the miscellaneous stuff before American Pickle? Because I feel like American Pickle is pretty significant in its scale and why it got picked up and all that stuff. So do we have anything we want to rattle off before we talk about it? I'm watching the Peacock show Hitman. I think it's a Sky show, like a Canadian show that they picked up. But it's about two women who are hitmen. It's apparently some characters from British Bake Off. I don't know their names. I'm just getting acquainted with these characters, but it takes place in London, but it's I guess Peacock picked it up and called it an original Peacock production, and it's super entertaining. It's just two people who you would not know were hitmen being hitmen, and it's just their personal lives are kind of woven in between, and they aren't particularly liked in their profession. They're kind of like the lackeys, not lackeys, but you'll see. You should check it out. It's a pretty solid, really funny show.
Peacock seems to have a few interesting things.
Yeah, man, they're going for it. I also finished that other Peacock show, the one that was based on the book, Brave World, A Brave New World. Yes. It's a lot. I don't hate it as much as Rotten Tomatoes hated it. I just think that it feels like a lot of I mean, this was based on a book from the 40s, from what I understand, about this dystopian world where America, there's this place called New London that becomes kind of the center where good people are, and everybody outside is like savages. And they don't believe in monogamy, privacy, currency, family, and there's literally no history. And so to manage your emotions, you take these pills that help you with anxiety, happiness, and since there's no monogamy, you Steve could just be a sexual god. You're like, oh, Steve is here. Let's have sex with Steve. And your wife would just have to deal with it. It's weird, man. But it has a lot of really cool ideas. I don't know how I picked you out. Steve. It just felt right.
That tells me a lot.
I like that he used you as an example of a sexual god, but he didn't say that to me. He's like, John, you still would be just a regular non-sexual god.
No, I didn't mean it like that. But it has a lot of interesting ideas. Whether it was executed well or not is a thing. You know, I actually think that the reason why people don't like it is because it's happening at the time that it's happening. It's, we're talking about dystopian future, and it seems like we're kind of heading to a place where people are, oh man, let's get into politics again. But there's some similarities between what's happening now and
it's a little bit easier to imagine a dystopia now than it was maybe just a few months ago or a few years ago. Yeah, it's easy to picture how it might turn into one. It is, and I don't care if I sound crazy when I say that. It's like if you talk to somebody who's been through some super traumatic experience in their life, they'll tell you that like they don't enjoy watching horror movies or thrillers where people are getting killed because they've had that real experience in their life, And it's similar. I think right now it's possible to be sort of traumatized by feeling like you're in a world on the brink, and suddenly stories about worlds on the brink it's not as fun. It's not as like thought provoking as much as it is like, oh shit, provoking.
Right, exactly. So I think that's part of it, and then some of the stories disjoint it. But to be completely honest, I enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed it. I like that it went for something. Like sometimes it feels like I'm watching the same version of a lot of things, and this at least was trying to go for something that felt like there was some newness in it. So, I enjoyed it. What about you guys?
I haven't really been watching a whole lot. Like I was telling you guys yesterday, I kind of had been hearing a lot about Perry Mason on HBO, so I've been trying to binge that. I'm about, I think, 5 or 6 episodes into that, which I really have enjoyed so far.
Yeah, I finished it, so I'll happily chat with you about it once you've finished watching it.
I want to watch it too.
I mean, we should all talk about it. I should be probably done in the next couple of days, hopefully.
Do you think maybe next time we can do a little look back on Perry Mason?
Yes.
Because I have thoughts and questions that I really think they're not quite spoilery, but they do sort of hint at just the shape of things.
I can't wait to watch the last couple episodes. So I mean, I'll let you guys know when I'm done. But yeah, we should try to talk about that next week. I'm trying to think of what else I watched. I started watching Umbrella Academy, which I've only gotten a couple episodes into, but everybody's been talking about that, and I never really caught on to it the first season, so I'm trying to catch up on that on Netflix. And then I think the only other thing I actually watched this week was I went and watched the Jason Weems special on Amazon after you mentioned it last week, John. I thought that was great, super funny. Highly recommend that to anybody with Amazon Prime.
Do you know what I mean about not having like a lag in it, like so many comedy specials do, where it's
dude.
Somehow in going beyond 35, 40 minutes, they hit a dead spot and then they get you back for some final bit. It just felt so consistent that I was actually sort of surprised when he got to the last joke. That's always a good sign when you're like, oh wow, that's it, No,
No, it was great. And I mean, and like Aaron watched it with me, like just on the fly, like, hey, I'm going to put this on. You want to check this out? And we'd like watch the whole thing together, and she was cracking up the whole time and like loved it. So I was happy it felt good to watch something that was consistently funny together, especially in this world that we're living in. And to watch it together, like just kind of out of nowhere. It was like, hey, John mentioned this last episode, like let's watch it. Like like we have Amazon Prime. I'm aware of who he is. I've seen Mike's movie that he's been in, and I've seen some of his comedy in general, but. It was a good decision. So yeah, if you have Amazon Prime, definitely check that out. It's called it's Unknown, right? Unknown with Jason Weems, or Jason Weems Unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that
Yeah, it's
special,
good.
man.
Yeah, it was really good.
I mean, I'm a little biased. I've done a couple shows with him. I did the first show that he did when he recovered from near dying. He was.
Right.
And then the podcast about that thing, man, is out of this world good. Yeah, I might be close to it, but I think it's like one of the better stand-up specials I've ever seen. But
it's really good.
yeah.
It's really and
It's really damn good.
And it's really funny and like I don't even know, like some of the kid jokes he does are just fucking. I was dying.
Yeah, he's
Like the jokes, the one joke he has about his kids putting on like winter gloves, like that killed me. like literally, like I have a 3-year-old and she's gotten better recently. Like she's been like gardening with me a lot this summer so far, so she's gotten a lot better at putting on gloves together and like understanding that a finger goes in each slot. But I swear, like last winter, like that was literally like what he does in that bit. Aaron and I were dying. Like that literally has happened to us, and it was so we could relate so much to that joke. It just killed us.
That's hilarious, man.
So good.
Can I rattle off a couple of shows I've watched?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So P Valley. I've talked about how crazy that show is. Stars, exotic dancers, down south drama, very very good. I just watched a mini series called Moms Make Porn about a bunch of moms who in London who were very opposed to porn, who decided to make a feminist porn that really emphasizes consent. And it goes through everybody's experience with sex and conservatism and how that plays into the way that the things that we project versus what we really feel. Man, it was like critically panned, but it was because people are so conservative about the subject matter. But it's one of the most carefully produced things I've ever seen. Moms Make Porn. On BET right now, they're going through record labels and they're coming to be. They just finished No Limit Chronicles and started Rough Riders Chronicles. Man, if you have any interest in Make 'em Say and Master P and his empire, it is fucking amazing. You learn things about the business that he was doing, where he basically took 80% of each record sold, which was unheard of for any time in history. Yeah, it's like really cool stuff like that. And then CBS Access, I checked out the pilot episode of Lower Decks, the animated Star Trek show that has close ties to the Next Generation. Man, I don't know what's happening with the Star Trek stuff, but this is one of those things that if you can relax your ideas of whatever you've seen of Star Trek and how badly they've brutalized the franchise in general. This is a really solid show, man. It's funny. It references a bunch of stuff that you probably love about Star Trek if you're a Trekkie of any sort, and makes a lot of references to characters that you love. It's just a solid show, and I hope that it continues. I know that CBS Access isn't doing too well, but I hope it finds a home somewhere else if CBS Access doesn't last.
Anything else?
So that's it for me. I guess now it's time to talk about the main event.
Yeah. How about that Seth Rogen?
Yeah.
I mean, Seth Rogen's great. Let's just say it like that. If I came away from this movie thinking anything, it's how much I love him as an actor, as a vibe, as an idea. I just think he is such an easily watchable person, and he's so likable on screen, and he's so funny. even more so than the movie itself, I thought his performances as these characters, as Ben Greenbaum and Herschel Greenbaum, a modern day Brooklynite and a pickled man who was preserved for 100 years, respectively. The way the two characters interacted, the generational stuff, the sort of I've thought many times about, would my grandfather, if he was my age and he was hanging out with me, what would he think of me? You know, you go back even further and the question's even bigger. What would your great-great-grandfather think of you if he was hanging out with you and you guys were peers? And I have always thought that people of that generation and of those times would think that I was a soft, weak, indecisive coward, you know? Always. It just seems like that's the first thing they would think. They'd be like, what are you even talking about, you know, half the time. And I think this movie plays that concept out really well. I think as its strength is the way that it plays out that concept. I think that the story gets into some satirical, kind of farcical places that it's almost like the pace at which the movie works against it having a statement to make, because I think you really could have made a statement about the generational divide or even cancel culture or any number of things, but the movie takes on so many different targets that ultimately when it got to the end, what I was really mostly concerned with was just how much I liked Seth Rogen in these roles and how assured he is as a fucking movie star. I mean, the guy's great.
He is. Yeah. No, totally agree with everything you just said. It does... I too enjoyed the movie. I kind of have the same criticisms, and you know, kind of the second act, kind of, and the beginning of the third act, kind of just starts to maybe do a little too much and tries to do a little too much of everything to kind of show, I guess, everything that's going on that may be a shock to someone coming, you know, 100 years later to reality right now. But yeah, the big takeaway, agreed. Like we were talking about it last podcast. I just think, yeah, he's an interesting guy. Like he's a really good actor. He's a good writer. Like his production company, you know, Point Grey is doing really well. And I pretty much, like I was saying, like try to watch everything that they do. And this is really no exception. I don't think it's like an amazing movie. It's very fun, very sweet, entertaining enough. And I think it's a good movie to have on HBO Max. But the big takeaway, yeah, is that like there are definite points in his corner of like, you know, he I think, and we all agree, I think that like he is one of the movie stars that are still out there, that there's something special about him. And I think, you know, the way he kind of balances these two performances, and just, yeah, the way they kind of play together so well, you know, even, you know, obviously, coming from the same actor, but it's just a really kind of nuanced thing, and it's a comedy, you know, in most respects, but there are some really heartfelt scenes, and that I think he plays really well. And I don't know, yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. I just really genuinely am excited to see movies that he's involved with in any way, shape, or form, and this is another one of them that really I did enjoy. And you know, I've recommended it to a couple people since we saw it last week, and you know, I think most people watching it are, you know, kind of enjoying it. It's a fun watch, and it's easy to watch too. You know, even with its faults, it's an easy, quick hour and a half, you know, movie that you kind of can't not walk away from it and feel like he's really good in the movie. Like he's just a really good actor, and he's fun to watch.
I agree. Sometimes in the whole like actor acts for a little bit, actor decides he wants to make movies, become superstar making movies himself. Sometimes I wish that they would have taken a writing class, just in the way that like first act, second act, third act, what are we saying in each of these things, and how do they connect? What's the through line? Sometimes I get very rattled by Seth Rogen's scripts. Sausage Party was the last one that kind of felt abysmal to me, like this one did. But like Sausage Party, I fucking loved it. And there's something about Seth Rogen still making scripts that feel kind of abysmal in the second into the third act. He knows what makes stories work. So there is some of that in a lot of heart that takes place in his story. So I would rather watch one of those than something that is like paint by numbers, if that makes any sense. Like,
Right.
I like
No,
that
that's a
it's,
good point.
yeah, it's, I'd rather watch a movie written by a person that could have taken a couple more writing classes versus somebody who just literally knows, okay, I'm predicting things if I know, most things that don't come from him. I know that sounds weird, but there's something about what he presents. I'm still left with, man, I took something out of that I haven't taken out of a lot of other movies. There's a heart to it. He seems to be in a place where religion is a lot more important to him than ever before. And I kind of like that, man. I kind of like that in the middle of this kind of place where people have these very, I don't believe in anything sort of ideas. And I, I'm not a super religious person. I like that somebody's taking some sort of stance on that. Like, you can find some happiness through this thing. I think that's pretty cool. It's cool, especially in the mainstream, man. Like, it's kind of interesting that people are saying things in a place where a lot of people don't try to say anything. So, yeah, it won me over, man.
In this movie, religion really kind of just stands in for a connectedness to the past and connectedness to family and tradition, So I think that in that sense, it manages to be sweet without being preachy. I think it is something you notice when it kind of creeps into the movie, but it does creep in much more as just a window into this in this conversation between these two guys. You realize that this is yet one more way that the modern man is going to seem like he's lost his way to the man from the past, because the modern man has all these distractions and things and isn't thinking about tradition and honoring things that came before. And so when Herschel, who has been pickled for 100 years and emerges into the modern day world of New York, and he encounters, a sort of a hipster great grandson, that's one more thing that puts a gulf between him, is that the great grandson has kind of become more secular, which I think in general people have become more secular over the last 100 years, but also in cities, people are more secular than they are in rural areas, What is the path of this movie? How did it end up on HBO Max?
Yeah, I think, Sony had it. 'Cause I think that's who his production, like, they have like a first look deal, I think, with Sony. But yeah, I mean, this is Sony, Columbia, they produced it. And yeah, I mean, basically, it was supposed to come out. I don't know if it was supposed to come out in April or May, but they sold it to Warner Brothers in April. I remember, because it was like right at the end of April for them to be able to release it on on HBO Max. Like, they started promoting that when they started like rolling out the dates for HBO Max. But yeah, I don't remember the exact date it was supposed to come out. But I'm trying to look it up real quick. I don't see a date. I just keep seeing the date that they sold it to Warner Brothers, which was April 27th. But I don't know that it actually had a theatrical release date. It may have been something that they had for at some point this year, but maybe in the fall. But they just sold to Warner when they kind of knew they weren't going to be putting any movies out this year. And then Sony doesn't really have a ton on their slate otherwise. But I mean. This year, I mean. But yeah, I don't know.
What do you think of those movies where someone acts against themselves? When it's an actor acting against using camera tricks to have them acting against themselves, do you wonder at times, like, it's almost like when I record music, if I play all the parts, there's a kind of, I always refer to it as a kind of airlessness to it, that like it's lockstep. It's me playing with me, singing to me, harmonizing with me. And by the end, there's like a uniform quality to it that can be very pleasing, but it can also be sort of like, You'll never know what you might have had if you'd had that other flavor brought in. And I spent half of this movie going, wow, Seth Rogen is really doing a good job of playing these two characters on this comic level. Just accent and costume does a lot. But, the different energy. Like when the two guys are dancing, for instance, there's a funny scene where they both are dancing, and their differences in that moment are very clear. And their physicality, the way they move, these things he's doing something different. But there are times where I just caught myself thinking, I wonder if another actor can get more out of you than a stand-in that is costumed to look like you. I just was wondering, as good as he is in this, is this performance hampered in any way by the fact that he's only reacting to his own rhythms and he knows what the other scene is going to be?
Right.
And how can you possibly have an emotional moment that really goes beyond the expected if you're just interacting with a theoretical version of yourself? I know I'm getting very into the technical weeds of acting, but did you guys think about that much watching this movie? I always do when someone's playing against themselves, like to think how odd it was on the set that day, that it was never these two men interacting. You know what I mean? Like the whole movie is the conversations between the two of them, and that never actually happened. So how do you track that emotional performance? How do you make something really magical happen when you're kind of, you're not going to be surprised by the other actor. You're only capable of doing what you can do on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So here's the thing, man. Hollywood has trends. There's two trends that are happening simultaneously that I'm hoping will stop soon. That is the dual roles, the one actor playing multiple people. We saw it in Mark Ruffalo's I Know This Much Is True. Paul Rudd's Living With Yourself. Marlon Wayans had a movie where he was playing multiple characters. Atlanta was a similar situation with Donald Glover. And then there's a Groundhog Day trend that is happening constantly. Now, I've seen good versions of all these things, and I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And I think there is some challenge. There is something to be said about an actor that can pull it off. I love it. I love when an actor can pull it off. I think Seth. I don't know, man. Like I think Seth has been pulling back these layers that I haven't seen in him ever in the last couple years, man. Like I like to see this side of him. I like to see him vulnerable and maybe an asshole in something, and challenging roles. And I think that he's capable of doing it in other things. I would be lying to you if I said I wanted to see this again. I'd be lying to you if I said I wanted to see more actors playing multiple characters on screen. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. But Seth pulled it off well enough for me not to feel like it was that. They felt like two different people to me.
Yeah.
And that's a mission accomplished.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So did you see Living With Yourself, the Paul Rudd series on Netflix?
No, I mean, I really have a hard time watching stuff where people play multiple characters, to be honest with you. I gave it a try because I'm a big, I like Seth Rogen stuff, and I really liked James Franco and the Deuce playing multiple characters. I love that. But no, I haven't. Was it good?
Did you see it, Steve? Living With Yourself?
Yes, I did.
I think Paul Rudd did an equally sort of similarly good job of figuring out how to do different versions of his own comic energy.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything else to say about American Pickle? I mean, again, I don't really know this writer and director team. Brandon Trost, it looks like he may have been a cinematographer on some
Most
things.
people, I mean, Simon Rich, I think, is a writer on SNL, but I mean, recently he did Miracle Workers on TBS. If you've watched that Daniel Radcliffe show, he's the creator, showrunner on that show.
Okay.
Which I think is a great show. If you've watched that, that's really good. He got a lot of stuff coming up. He did some stuff on that Man Seeking Woman show that we've talked about before. Like where I've seen him, pop up here and there. But I know currently, he's a writer on SNL, which I think is probably what most people probably are aware of him. But he's got a lot of stuff in production, though. I know.
Didn't he work for Pixar as like a staff writer at some point?
Yeah, I think he's actually also writing the new Willy Wonka movie that Paul King is directing.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I don't know. I've seen his name pop up a bunch. Yeah, he's got a lot going on.
This movie has enough of that sort of magical storytelling. I could see him being, I mean, the whole idea of a man being pickled and coming out and he's fine. And I love the way they play it in the movie. That's one of the funniest jokes for me is when they're at the press conference and the narrator is Seth Rogen's character telling you what happened. And someone at the press conference says, wait, how does this make sense that this guy would be perfectly fine after sitting in a barrel of pickles for 100 years, you know? And then the person starts explaining it. And the narration says, the scientists explained it and everyone was satisfied.
Yeah, I love that line. Such a good line. What a fairy tale. Yeah, man. I think that's it for me. I mean, I think it's something that if it sounds interesting to you, or you like Seth Rogen, or you have an HBO Max subscription, I think we would recommend checking out American Pickle. If you haven't yet, it's available now. I don't know what's coming out next week that we could talk about. I'm trying to think. I don't know, actually. There's a couple things on the calendar coming up, but
Well, we'll talk about Perry Mason, hopefully, if Ronald can make it through.
yeah, we'll get that going. Hopefully, if we all catch up on that. And yeah, I don't know. There's not much. I know coming out this week, hopefully, that we get this out on Friday. A couple of VOD titles coming out. I know Joe Keery's is that his name? Keery? Yeah, Joe Keery from Stranger Things. He's got a VOD title coming out called Spree, which is I think was at Sundance. And, that looks kind of fun, like kind of an Uber driver who fucking crazy killing people, I guess. Kind of like American Psycho-ish. I saw a couple people describe it as such.
And Lovecraft Country comes out next weekend, too.
And then I saw something else that I wanted to check out this weekend. Oh, there's a documentary coming out called Happy Happy Joy Joy about...
Oh, yeah, the Ren and Stimpy one.
Mm-hmm. The Ren and Stimpy doc that comes out this weekend, I think, too. So definitely want to try to check those out. So maybe if we can talk about those.
The Jamie Foxx movie comes out with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, right?
Yep.
Oh, the Netflix movie, right?
Yeah.
I think that's it, man. I think that's all we got this week. We'll wrap it up. You guys good?
Yeah.
Ronald, you good?
Yeah.
All right, man. You can find us at movieschmovie.com, facebook.com/movieschmovie. Find us there. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know what you think of anything that we've talked about on the podcast. If you check out An American Pickle, tell us what you thought of that, too. We would appreciate it. And if you happen to watch Lovecraft Country on Sunday, you can shoot us a message there and let us know what you thought of that, because I'm sure we'll talk about it next week. Maybe we can mention your feedback on the air or something like that. But we'll figure something out if anybody wants to share their thoughts on that show. Hopefully we can talk about that next week. But you can find us on all the podcast platforms. We should be everywhere. And if we're not, let us know and we'll find our way there. But thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us for episode 264 of Movie Schmovie. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.